We're going to be looking at our outline today, page 7 in your syllabus, and also open to 1 Timothy chapter 3. When we talk about leadership, we look at leadership in three dimensions. First of all, just the oversight of the entire thing called the church. And your class on ecclesiology covered much of what the church is about. We'll spend much of our PM 712 class discussing about the entire work of the church and your role into that. The second part of ministry has to do with character, the leader that you are, and the qualifications for leadership have a lot to do with character. Reading through Sanders' book, obviously the emphasis was on the person that you are. Going to lead by modeling, and what you are then is going to make a big impact in the lives of people. The third dimension is ability. You're being able to teach the word, preach the word, exhort, reclaim, defend the faith, lead people to Christ, all those that have to do with your ableness in ministry. For the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time just going through some of the qualifications of leadership found in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1. Just to encourage our hearts that we would be the men God would like us to be. It is part of our training for us to be working on these various attributes of godliness. None of us have arrived. We're all working at this thing. But especially as seminarians, one of your ambitions should be to go ahead and take this list and become the man that God wants you to be. And so, again, take these lists, review them on a regular basis, put them up someplace for you, if you're married, for you and your wife to look at these things and say, Lord, help us to be this person that you want us to be as we are going to be shepherding your flock. So chapter 3 of 1 Timothy, we notice that it says, it is a trustworthy statement. If any man aspires to the office of overseers, a fine work he desires to do. We spent some time last week talking about that. An overseer then must be above reproach. And then he begins to list all the different characteristics or qualities that an overseer must have. Not that he should have, but that he must have. Notice that. Not that he should have, but that he must have. Must be above reproach. It begins by saying, first of all, the husband of one wife, and then temperate, prudent, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, etc. So we'll take some of these in order. First of all, the idea of the husband of one wife, and then secondly, that how to govern his own children. And so we begin by talking about, first of all, the leader's wife, the leader and his wife. You as a husband. It's really tragic that we have to talk about this topic today. But God's in charge and God is sovereign. And God will remind us of the importance of making sure that you and your wife, that you're a one-woman man. And it goes beyond the whole issue of simply sexual purity. It goes to the very heart of simply recognizing that if you are married, then God has called you to be a faithful husband. To love your wife, to be a good husband to your wife. If you are single, we'll have some words along that line as well. But obviously purity in this area of sexual purity is a must. It is a must for all of us, married or single. There's some notes there in the explanation of this phrase. There are various views, and you can have them there for your notes. Obviously, the emphasis is obviously sexual purity, commitment to your wife, fidelity to your wife. You're married, your heart will belong to your wife, and that's the bottom line. If it's a character quality, it's loyalty, faithfulness, devotion to your wife, not only your body but also your heart and your mind. Let me make an observation. Secondly, that marriage is not a prerequisite for ministry. Okay, if you are married, it's expected that you be a one-woman man. If you're not married, it doesn't eliminate you from ministry. We know that from the Apostle Paul's life and the fact that others that were single also had a part in ministry. But notice that the principle of purity still applies. Just because you're single does not mean you shouldn't care about your purity or, gentlemen, about the appearance of evil. You can be most affected by that. You know, as a single man, how do you conduct yourself with the opposite sex? How do you apply yourself in areas that there might be questionable behavior, the appearance of evil, things like that? So you need to be careful in relation to that.
The question isn't can you be in ministry? The question, I think, is can you be an elder? Paul never claims to be an elder. Peter, who's married, does. Paul is an apostle. How can a body of believers, how can Paul or any of them affirm this quality in somebody unless they see it exhibited? I mean, it's a positive characteristic, faithfulness to one's life. I mean, and it seems to be like what we do is we just give the benefit of the doubt to people who have yet proved themselves in that area. You get the arguments from the lesser to the greater. You demonstrate your house first, and then if people want to witness that and say, well, we think if you can rule your house, you can rule the church.
Yeah, that's an argument that is argued. In other words, is he arguing for Paul's condition? Is he for eldership or is simply an apostle? Again, it's an argument from the greater to the lesser. The office of apostle obviously greater than the office of elder. So we see that if he is an apostle, can give directions to the church, then, and he's single, and give advice to marriage and all these other things, and he's an apostle, the argument from the greater to the lesser also applies in this regard. So again, it's open to debate. However, they are character qualities, then the emphasis is character quality, not status. See, because it would argue also the other way, if I'm married and don't have any children, does that disqualify me? That's also an argument. Since the other qualification has to do with children, does that disqualify me? Obviously not, because we're talking about character qualities that can display it. If you are married, if you do have children, then you need to behave in this way. So again, the principle of purity still applies, and you want to keep that in mind. There are some drawbacks to being a single elder or a single pastor, and that is that sometimes a congregation may not respond as readily to a man that's single as they would to a man that's married. And so you that are single, going out into ministry, you may face that, if I can call it, prejudice by married people who may not respond as readily to you in the office of pastor, the office of elder. But again, we may also emphasize here that there may be specialized ministries that you can perform that gives you great liberty in regards to ministry. There's also the idea of enlisting others to help you. You may be a pastor that's not married, and you have to counsel women or counsel couples in marriage. You may be able then to create help. You know, one of my staff members is still single. He's a TMS grad from 10 years ago, and he's still single, and can't quite get him married yet. You know, and. But as he pastors the Spanish department, he's had to recruit couples to help him in this regard, who he trains and teaches, and so they handle much of the counseling that has to do with marriage counseling, although he himself has been able to do quite a bit because the principles still apply. Whether you're married or single, these truths still apply, and he's old enough to provide a measure of confidence because he's an older man. And so because of that, he's been around the block a few times, and so his credibility is extremely high. He's been there now for 10 years. So he's been able to gain, some credibility. And he's also been the one growing the work, so it also adds credibility. So as a single man, don't despair. Don't think that somehow because you're not hitched, don't have a wife, that somehow you have no ministry. Recognize that God will still use you. But again, emphasize the importance of maintaining a pure life before the Lord. Let me make this third observation concerning marriage as a biblical priority. Now, if you are married, marriage is your priority. Your wife is your priority. We saw that this morning, that if you lose your wife, you lose your ministry. If you lose your marriage, you lose your ministry. Put that someplace to just keep you focused. Don't be so wrapped up in ministry that you have a tendency to change the priorities and put ministry above your marriage. Marriage is toward the top. It is the top. If you are married, let me just remind us of these things that have to do with priority. To love your wife, Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives just as what? Christ loved the church. And that is not a recommendation, that is a command. Okay? Some of you are married to great wives. They're great wives all the time. 7 days a week since you got married. Others of us have difficult wives. They're good most of the time, but sometimes they can get on the rough side. Okay? God says, love your wives. Just love them just as Christ loved the church. Your wife needs to know, she needs to know that you love her. Make it a point, gentlemen, that every day tell your wife you love her. Make it a point. Someplace, somewhere, morning, noon, or night. Better yet, morning, noon, and night. Tell her that you love her. Communicate that to her. She needs to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you love her. That's your command, to love your wife. If your wife knows that she has your undivided devotion, if she knows that you love her more than anything else in this whole world next to Christ, you're going to have some happy gal by your side who will be able to minister with you to the ends of the earth if she knows that you love her. Notice also, secondly, your job is to provide for your wife. 1 Timothy 5:8. He that will not provide for his wife has denied the faith and is worse than a, finish it, unbeliever. So again, it's take care of your wife. And sometimes in ministry it can be mighty thin. So make a note there. Sometimes you'll have to make some tents on the side. Okay, just make sure your wife is properly taken care of. We'll talk more about finances and things like that as the semester goes along, how we can make sure that your wife is adequately taken care of. As you think about ministry, prepare yourself for ministry as your candidate. You keep that in mind as you discuss with elder boards, search committees. Your job is to make sure that your wife is properly taken care of. You might have to work long hours. You're in seminary now. You might have to work some long hours to make sure that she is properly fed and properly housed. Number 3, honor your wife. 1 Peter 5, 1 Peter 3:7 speaks about the fact that we should honor our wives. Interesting truth there, because your wife is really your sister in the Lord. One of the great things about marriage is that you get a chance to marry a sister in the Lord. She belongs to the Lord, and God has given you the privilege to marry one of His daughters. So make sure you elevate her to that perspective. In ministry sometimes, or in marriage, we may treat our wives almost like little slaves or like maids or somebody that's like beneath us. Friends, she is next to you. Grant her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life. Always address her as a sister in the Lord. For example, sometimes a brother may, are you married? You may treat your wife one way, and then all of a sudden you go to church and you see a sister in the Lord, and now you treat her with great reverence, with great respect. You talk to her kindly, and your wife is listening to you and says, look at this hypocrite. He's been scolding me all the way to church and talking mean to me and demeaning me. Then he comes to church and he talks to the sisters better than he talks to me. Never happened that way. She is your sister in the Lord, and don't ever forget that. God has given you the privilege and the honor of dating one of his daughters and then marrying one of his daughters. And when you get to heaven, she will not be your wife. It'll be a sad day in heaven when she tells the whole world how bad you were to her when she was your wife. I don't think it'll happen, but look at D. Fourthly, be sure and lead your wife. Lead your wife. 1 Corinthians 11:2 and following. And also for Ephesians 5:21 and following. Gentlemen, You are made, you're the head of your home. Okay, you've been given the headship. And so you need to keep that in mind, that you are the head of your home. You might have to talk to your wife about that. There's always a struggle in some homes where the wife is the one that wears the pants. A class about this size, there may be at least one of us in our midst where the wife calls the shots. And then a wife can be very manipulating and very controlling. Very controlling. So you work that out, because you'll never make it in ministry if you are not the head of your home. Okay, God has given you that responsibility. Go have a long talk with your wife about it, if she's like that. Go through the text, go through the scriptures, etc. Because you need to really understand that God has made you the head. It's a biblical position that God has given to you. And so be sure and address that. Number 5, be sure and commit yourself to your wife. Matthew 19:3. A devotion, commitment in marriage, loyalty. Be loyal to your wife in every regard. Make sure she understands and you understand that she is your wife until death do you what? Part. And that you'll never leave her or forsake her. She needs to know that. She needs to know that. Number 6 there, minister to your wife. 1 Corinthians 7:3. The context there is obviously sexually. Minister to your wife sexually. That is your due. That is your obligation. And it's the issue of ministering to your wife, and I think it includes, it's broader than just sexually. Be sure it's spiritually, etc. Gentlemen, she is your first disciple. Your first disciple. What your wife is 5 or 6 or 5 or 10 years from now, it's because you made her that. If 10 years from now your wife is a wreck, it's because you cannot disciple anybody. Okay, your wife is your first disciple. She is a reflection of your ability to impress others with the gospel of Christ and with the likeness of Christ. She is your primary disciple. And so in these 3 or 4 years that you're in seminary, you ought to see her be growing. You ought to see growth in her life. If there is no growth in her life, we have a problem. We have a problem. So look at her as your first disciple. Include her in these things. We don't mind if you bring her to class. We don't mind, but think about her as growing in the Lord. She is your first disciple. Make sure that she is being fed, that she has her quiet time, that she's growing in Christ. Make sure that she, in her attitude, that she's growing in her devotion for Christ. We've seen it sometimes. We begin level, and before you know it, the man is totally outranked his wife. He forgets about her entire spiritual life. He's focused on his own ministry, his own studies, his own thing, and the wife is just neglected. Then you wonder why. Later on, they just bail out. They don't have the spiritual depth they should be having. They don't have the knowledge they should be having, and before you know it, they jump ship. She's your disciple. So make sure that she is the one you minister. You pray for her, you pray with her, etc. That she's growing with you, growing with you. And then the last point, number 7 there. Be sure and assist your wife. 1 Peter 3:7 talked about her as the weaker vessel. She's weaker, not mentally. In some of our cases, we have wives that are sharper than we are. She's not weaker spiritually, obviously not, but she is really weaker physically. So give her a hand. Give her a hand. Some of you guys have 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 kids. Give her a hand with the kids. Make sure that you're there helping her out. How about doing some things around the house? How about relieving her every now and then? Realize that you are, so make that part of your, thing before God, that she looks at you and she finds a man that is really there to help her. Gentlemen, again, she's your wife, she's your first love. Focus on her. If you prepare a great wife, you're going to have a great ministry. Okay? So think about these years, not only your preparation, but also her preparation. Encourage you to be a part of SEM Wives. You know, you stay home and watch the kids, have her come, do things like that, buy her books, share stuff that you've learned in seminary here, go home, spend time with her. You know, keep her in the loop. Notice also, understand your wife's role as you think of her ministry. She has a really interesting role as your wife and get involved in ministry. And I'm talking about the way things are. There are ways that there are some things that we say, well, life should be like this in the ministry. That's right, but I'm talking about the way things are for most of us when you go out to minister. Number one, under this, you need to tell her, I wish she was here listening to this stuff, but you know, take these notes and share them with her. First of all, she is the minister's minister. Your wife is your minister. She has one role to play. I mean, she's like you're the boxer in the boxing ring, and she's like, what do they call the guy in the corner? He's the corner man, your trainer, and she's there when you sit down with a little, you know, flag and wiping the sweat off you, putting the Gatorade down your mouth, you know, and saying to you, champ, you got him, go get him, champ, you know, and that's her role. Her role is to minister to you. Her role is to really keep you pumped up, keep you wound up, keep you going. You know, she is your main encouragement. If you got a wife like that, you don't want to have a wife like Job, okay? She, you know, curse God and die, you know? You come home from an NTI class and say, you know, wife, you know, honey, this NTI class is killing me. Dr. Thomas is a ruthless old man. You don't want to say, well, then quit. You know, quit. Go sell drugs. You know, see, you want someone who's going to be there to really encourage you. And that's her role. I mean, if she can learn that role well of just knowing how to keep you going, you're going to have a great, great wife. I've listed some of the things that she can do for you here. Just little bullet points, just some very practical things that she can do for you. Support you, right behind you, right behind you. And notice it goes hand in hand with leadership. If she doesn't believe that you are the head, she can't follow. Okay? She can't follow. But if she believes that you're the head, she can be right behind you saying, you know, whatever God tells you to do, I'm with you. Well, you know, honey, I think the Lord is directing me to be a missionary to Russia. What do you think, honey? Well, you know, hon, whatever the Lord wants you to do, I'm with you. I'm with you. Pray about it. Just seek the Lord. If that's what God wants you to do, then let's do it. See, that kind. Versus saying, oh, I'm not going to Russia. You can go by yourself, but I'm not going. See, you don't need that kind of a person. You need someone that's going to be there supporting you. I can recall being in Hebrew class, Hebrew exegesis, and I mean, like 9 o'clock at night, you know, sitting at my desk and just totally like, my brain was just fried. You know, Hebrew was hard for me. And then to be a knock at the door, you know, because we had a 2-bedroom apartment and one was my study, and she would knock. And I'd say, well, come in. And she would come in with a fresh cup of coffee with homemade cookies. Boy, that'd pump you up, wouldn't it? Just here, I made you these and to help you, you know. And but that would put some juice into you, and it still flunked the Hebrew, but I had a great cup of coffee. Yeah, great cookies, you know. But just to know that she was there, you know, there, encouraging this. She needs to smile at you, the sense of joy, okay, the sense of joy, a joyous person in your life. Suggestions, she needs to be honest with you. You need an honest person in your life who's going to tell it the way it is, but tell it in a nice way. And she's there for you. She's there to suggest to you things when you need. She needs to provide solitude, to leave you alone when you need to be alone. You need simplicity in your life. You need a well-organized life so that your life is really not cluttered with all kinds of stuff. She needs to be a woman of spirituality who loves God, who loves the church. She's there also in 1 Corinthians 7 to provide the other side, to be sure she ministers to your needs. She's also there to give you a sense of self-esteem, to build up your shattered ego. And life can do that to you. Life can really set you back. And she's there to provide that sense of balance for your life. And so this is one thing, she can do these things, and if she masters these, you're going to have a great person in your corner. It's going to keep you going year after year, decade after decade, etc. Notice, secondly, as we think about her duties, notice also not only does she have her primary task is ministry to you, but also notice she has gifts as well. Your wife has gifts. God has given her a gift or gifts. And so her job is also to get involved in ministry, but minister according to her abilities. Sometimes in churches they have these, your wife has to be like piano player, choir director, children's director, church secretary, and all these other things. Well, your wife may not know how to play the piano. She may not carry a tune. She may not be able to type, so she's not going to fill those things. She needs to find her gift. And part of your job is to help her find that gift that she has. And then help her find ministry. See, you and I feel, we feel fulfilled in doing the thing that God has called us to. Right? Now, there's your wife who's going to join you for the long haul. Well, see, she's also a child of God, and she has gifts, and she's got to feel the same way. She's got to feel that she's involved in church doing the things she loves to do. See? Not necessarily just, just be in the nursery. We have 3 kids, so be in the nursery. That's your ministry, the nursery. She may say, well, that's not my gift. My gift is in other areas. And so help her find her gift, and then put her, liberate her so she can be involved in those areas of ministry. If your gal has the gift of teaching, then free her up to do those things. If she has a gift of leadership, she can administrate or head some department, free her up for that as well. If her gift is service, then again, help her discover that. And free her up. I always tell my wife, listen, honey, you do what you want to do in church. So you know what? I can't play the piano. Well, don't play the piano. Just do whatever you feel you want to do, and that's your involvement. And so she does that. She's been able to do what she is most gifted at. And boy, that's a real spark in her life, because then she looks forward to, week after week. She's been teaching now for the last 15 years the single women's class in our church. So that's what she does. The wives, widows, wives whose husbands aren't believers, and single ladies. So she's her 15th year now. And she's really good at it, and she thrives on that. She really pursues that. And that's what I want her to feel. I want her to, honey, I want you to feel the same joy that I feel when I do ministry. And you can do the same thing. So again, she has gifts, so make sure she utilizes these gifts. Fellows, what you don't want to do is just keep your wife at home watching the kids. That's okay for a little while. But in the long haul, that would be extremely frustrating for this very talented gal that God has given you to be your wife. Help her find her gift, and then set her free. And be sacrificial like she is with you when it comes to ministry. We sometimes don't want to be that way. Other day, she had an outing with her ladies. They went to some play down in L.A. someplace, a Christian thing. And so she said, I have this appointment. We made this outing, and she usually makes them when I'm not around. Like when I take a trip, then we usually dovetail, and so I'm gone someplace, so she's gone someplace. So we kind of work it out. But this time it didn't work out that way. So I was home, and so she says, but you're going to be home. I says, yeah, I'm going to be home. Well, I don't want to go. I says, well, it's up to you. You need to go. She says, no, well, tell me not to go. I'm not going to tell you not to go. You need to go, and you need to do what you need to do. And so she left me. She left me all by herself. But I want her to feel that, I felt good about that. I wanted her to go, and that I'd be okay, and I had things to do, things to watch, and football games to watch, and things like that. So we're okay. But I want her to feel that, just because we're not together, that somehow she's not being faithful. She is being faithful. That's part of her ministry.
And I think that's excellent advice. I found that to be true. Could you speak also to the other end of the spectrum of the wife that maybe would overextend herself or want to be involved too much, and just knowing where do you jump in and go, I think maybe you're...
Yeah, as a husband, you need to also watch that your wife doesn't get overextended. And by your leadership, you're able to say to her, honey, I think you're a little bit overextended here. So let's maybe cut off a few things, examine this. I think you're able to help her along this line. So she doesn't get burned out just trying to be faithful to every demand that's made on her. Eventually, she'll seesaw back and forth, and then she'll find that area of ministry where she feels most comfortable. But yeah, as a head of your home, you've got to watch her spirituality, that she's not so burned out and so exhausted that, that she just can't function after a while. It's good. Notice, see, she's also a role model. Again, just because she sees your wife and you're the pastor, people look at her as an example to model. And so it's important that she understand that. You just can't say, you know what, I'm not going to be anybody's role model, I'm going to be me. You say, honey, it's too late for that. It's too late for that. That's part of that comes with the territory. You are going to be somebody's role model, so accept it and don't forget it. Don't forget it. It's important. The way she dresses, what she does, all of that is important. Just her going to church is important. Okay? Just her being there, just the way she listens to your sermon is important. If you're preaching away and she's looking down and won't look up at you, and you crack a joke and she doesn't laugh, you follow me? They're saying, what's going on here, This gal is by her body language giving us the opposite thing. So she's a role model. People are going to watch the way she carries herself, the way she dresses, the way she talks, the way everything. And she wants to provide an example, and so she can't forget that. Look at D. She is also what we call a second banana. She's a second banana. You got to help your wife with that. A second banana, and encourage her not to let it. Like you're the top banana. You're the top banana, and then there's your wife in the second banana. Okay, and sometimes the people can be really ruthless when it comes to the second banana. Okay, so you need to help her with that and help your people with that as well. For example, they'll call the house and she'll answer the phone and people will say, hi, can I talk to the pastor? Like she's the wife, and they're just totally classless, classless. Or it'll be you and your wife, and they'll come and say, hey, hi, pastor, how are you? Man, so good to see you. That was a great sermon today, and not even say a word to the wife. There's people like that are really just classless. And so your wife can really feel bad about that. So you need to just say, honey, there are just classless people in our church. And so I'll help you with that, okay? I'll help you with it. And so you try to help your wife by including you. Hi, and you say, I'd like you to meet my wife, see? Just pull your wife in close, I want you to meet my wife, and include her in. It's our ministry, see? Not my ministry. It's our ministry. And friends, sometimes we can get so into this thing, we forget about that. We forget about that. I've had, in the past, have seminarians come to our church, and they do what I just did. Hey, professor, boy, man, good to see you. And the wife is there, and the guy's classless. Instead of saying, hello, Mrs. Montoya, so good to see you. And and so you have the same problem, because I had the same problem. I can recall honoring our board and forgetting my wife. Asking all the elders and the deacons and their wives to come up, and pastors to come up and their wives, and then get home. You know what I'm saying? And I was curtained. I was dead. I was a dead meat, for weeks. No breakfast, no lunch, no dinner, Because it's just so insensitive. And so, I'm over that now, okay? I've repented, and in sackcloth and ashes. But I can recall that, and look at E. She needs to understand that leadership is loneliness. It's lonely, fellas. One of the greatest times you'll have is right here in seminary. And you'll get out there in church sometimes, and it's really lonely. You know, it's hard to find, kind of a bosom buddy, and find someone you can really relate to. And sometimes the wife has the same problem. She can't just seem to connect. And when she does connect, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So watch that because it can be lonely, and so encourage her and help her in regards to that, because just keep her eye open. Leadership can be lonely. Look at the next one. Make sure that she enjoys the fruit of being a pastor's wife. It's a lot of blessings, and sometimes we don't focus on this when we talk about pastoral ministry. That this issue of that she can, has a great. She's your wife, first of all. She's a part of your ministry. And when you put this with a second banana thing, to realize that she's a part of your ministry, whatever God is allowing you to do, she's also a part of that. That she's really the first lady of the parish, if I can just use that expression. Again, we may not want to, but it's like the role that Mrs. Bush, the role she plays. I mean, she is like, it's a very distinguished role, and your wife will have the same position. She's married to a self-employed man. See, sometimes they complain, you're always gone, but she's married to a self-employed man. In other words, she can call the office and she can call me and say, what are you doing for lunch today? Well, I'm really nothing. She says, why don't you come home for lunch? Why don't you take a long lunch? Okay, I'll take a long lunch. See, I mean, I'm self-employed. I can do that. Fellow, I can do that. She can say, this Friday is my birthday. What do you think? Well, let me look at my schedule. Yeah, I think I can juggle this stuff, and I can take the afternoon off. Why? Because I'm the boss. See? I'm the boss. I can tell the secretary, listen, I'm going to be gone Friday afternoon, so no appointments Friday afternoon. She's married to that kind of man. You see? Whereas in another occupation, you probably couldn't do that. But you can't do it, and so this is one of the pluses of it. Also notice that she's also the recipient of the congregation's affections. And as she ministers and she invests in the life of the people, you'd be amazed at how they're going to love her. I mean, in our church, if you go to our church, they love her more than they love me. Okay? In the early years, the first couple of years, like everybody wanted to talk to me. Now, nobody talks to me. See, they talk to her, and she's like, she has the affection of the people, and that's great. I want her to sense this. I mean, she'll get cards from people, appreciations, etc. It's just a neat thing to be involved in people's lives. And then finally, she's a partner in ministry. Learn to speak of our ministry, gentlemen, our ministry, our work, things that God has done for us. Notice under G, she also needs her privacy respected. When you begin to preach, be careful about using her as your illustrations. Always ask for permission, or you're going to be dead, some night. Respect her privacy, respect her life, respect her life. Understand that she has also a life to live. She needs special time with her family. She makes sure that she has time with the kids and with you. Okay, with you. So figure that one in. And again, remind her that she needs to make chapter 31 of Proverbs her goal in life. And so share with her these things, disciple her. God will bless you if you have a great wife. So again, part of your preparation for ministry is work on her life. Okay, make sure that she's also growing, that she's loving. Okay, that she's loving the ministry, that she's loving what you do, that she's excited about the things that you're involved in. And once that happens and you gel together, man, it's going to be great stuff. Seminarians. What about if you're a single seminarian? What about you? I thought I'd give you some thoughts for you. Who's not married? Raise your hand, you're not married. And don't plan to stay single. Okay, somebody put, you didn't know the question. Okay, if you're single, and let me just give you these recommendations, because here's the thing: if you marry the wrong person, you're dead. Okay, if you panic and get tied up with the wrong person, imagine all these hours and hours and thousands of dollars you poured into the school, and then you go up and marry the wrong person. It's all like wasted. Okay, marry the right person. So follow with me. Find somebody compatible with you. Okay, somebody who's just right there with you, who's a believer first of all. She's a believer most of all. She loves the Lord. Really key. Never mind the looks. Don't look there first. Usually you're single, you're looking at the looks, the face, the body, etc. Put that down the list. Believer, loves the Lord, toward the top. I mean, way toward the top. Number 2, notice prudence. Prudence. A prudent wife. The idea of prudence is not so much IQ. It's not so much BA, MBA, PhD, McDLT, none of those things, okay? It's that she have common sense, prudence. That she have this common, sanctified common sense. Man, I tell you, in ministry, that is what key. So find that kind of wife. You find this seminary, sometimes you find these gals, they're pretty, they have this flowing, nice golden hair, and just walking around like nobody's home. You know what I'm saying? Lights are on, nobody's home, just total flighty, You don't need that. You don't need that. You need somebody who really has their feet on the ground. C, notice, submissive woman. Test her out in this. Test her. If she's not submissive, dump her. Under D, find someone that really desires the ministry, who really loves to be in ministry, wants to serve God, has a sense of passion, wants to be a missionary, wants to serve God, has the same passion you have. You don't want to find someone who says, the last thing I want to do is marry a pastor. You don't want that. Or someone that doesn't like ministry. Okay, you have a choice now, as a single person, to find someone that really, really loves the ministry. Notice E, who loves people. Who loves people. This is toward the top. Man, if your wife doesn't love people, you're in deep trouble. Deep trouble. Fellas, one of the reasons why some pastors just blow it in ministry, it's because their wife doesn't love people. They just don't. Like if you're an armchair pastor, if you're a great gifted person, totally gifted, where you can kind of go from your study into the pulpit, back into your study, and people just throng, you can get away with a woman like this. But if you're not, if you're just like the rank and file, like the rest of us, that you need all your marbles on the table just to get the job done, your wife is one of these marbles. She's got to love people. Because if she doesn't, you're out of it. Because in most of our churches, women are the majority. Speak to me, aren't they? And if they know that your wife doesn't like them, you're out the door. So again, make sure that she loves people, that she's a people person. Under F, that she's godly character. Under G, that she's above reproach. They go hand in hand, okay? That she's really right, an impeccable lady. And then under H, that she's a gal that perseveres under trial. You want someone that has an ability to stick it out. She's not a quitter. She doesn't just flake out, She's not a crybaby. She's not a moaner. You know what I'm saying? You want to have someone like that alongside. So, as a single person, you don't want someone that you have to baby, You don't want someone that you've always got to baby and baby and baby and baby. Oh, I don't like your car. And I don't like the food. I didn't like the restaurant you took me to. And I don't like the way you dress. And I hate traffic, Get out of the car and walk home. You had a question over here.
When you say about reproach, it also includes women who are divorced.
Yeah, if I don't know your position on divorce, okay. I don't think that divorce eliminates a person from marrying a seminarian, okay. But I think that would be that she should be in Christ long enough that she has been able to put that way, way behind. She's above reproach in that regard. I know in some associations, marrying a divorced woman may put you out of the ministry. I don't think it should. Like all these other qualifications, there's anger and things like that. A lot of other stuff doesn't disqualify us. So I think it's a character trait. But above reproach means it's all behind her. Years have passed, and she's really had this demonstration of being a great woman of God, loves the Lord, and understands her error, what happened in the past. It's behind her. So I think there's a place for that.